welcome to Flory Models Daily Vlog. Here we are on Wednesday. Busy day today. To be honest, this is one of those days where you do loads of little things, don't seem to really get very far, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, okay, we're moving on. So what I've done really is working on the lights. We've made our own slime lines, which the night navigation lights all over this. Obviously this kit doesn't have them, and to give them that sort of three-dimensional look, we've used PVC tape as the backing, and then a very thin piece of plastic card on top to give you the actual slime line. So you can see the T lights down there. We've actually put the lights on there as well, and then we've gone around and weathered those in, so that's all looking very good on there. Really starting to take shape now. The other thing I've been doing is working on the gear. So we've done the wheels, and we're working on the main gear, and we're wiring it up. So we're putting, obviously this is the electrics for the front, for the nose wheel light, and all the areas like that. And then we've just, as you can probably see here, hopefully you can see, just started running all the, what are the brake lines, hydraulic lines and everything for the main gear, going around and doing them. We're going to then paint them up, weather them in and everything else like that, and we can get those installed. We've also done the nose doors, wherever they are. I've got another one down in here. So we've actually got the doors are all ready to go on. So hopefully by tomorrow we'll be in a situation where we can liven up the electronics bay, get the gun done, and it's really starting to come together. As I say, weapons fit, a couple of people asked me about that. Just going to stick a couple of Mavericks on it. I've got some rocket pods to go on there. Maybe stick, I don't know, some Mark 82s underneath it. But it's going to have what I call a working loadout. It's not going to be one of these A10s you see with everything hung under it, because technically it's not very realistic. So I'm just going to put a sort of standard modern day fit with it. The only thing I would love to get, but you haven't got here, is something like a lantern pod or something else like that. I haven't actually got one in 32nd here, so I might try and source one of them from somewhere, hopefully before the final reveal. But generally, hopefully, you can see she is starting to come to life. And I must admit, the thing with the A10 is that she looks as good on the ground as she does in the air. And I must admit, you know, there's a part of me that would love to do one of these in flight as well. So, but generally, we are really pushing on with that one. The other thing as well is up today, and it is up with you. He says, grabbing it quickly, is the actual well, this is Tackham's latest, or one of, it's not that new, it's been around for about 6 months now. This is the Porsche turret. This one comes without the Zimmerit on here. You can have it a version with the Zimmerit and everything else. The great thing about this particular kit is, though, it's got this scale armor effect. Now, I don't know about it. I'm not an armor guy. I don't know this particular kit very well either. But I'm just thinking that, you know, it would be one of those things you could technically chop it in half or take chunks out of it and then obviously paint the edges red to give it that nice sort of internal look, because this is going to be one of those kits where we're going to be working on this as well. So I'm going to do it where you need to open it up to appreciate all that work and everything that's gone in there. And now I've seen different guys do different things before. They've had it on like a pole system, so it's like an exploded diagram effect of doing it. I've seen other guys who just have it next to it in stages open and stuff like that. But with this particular one, if it is that sort of scale fit, you can almost take chunks off and show it. I don't know which way I'm going to do it. I'm probably going to have mine like an exploded version, if you like, with it down in there. And a few people have spoken to me that apparently the light's in the wrong place and there's this wrong with it and that. But to me, it's King Tiger. The other thing as well is the only one I know of with the Porsche turret is the one at Bovington, which is, I don't know if it's still there because they've had a move around recently, but it used to be the one that had the gun pointing at you when you walked in. That one doesn't have Zimmerit on it either, and I might be thinking to try and recreate the one from Bovington. As I say, don't know yet, playing with a few ideas with it. Actually, it should be a nice fun build, but it's going to be more about the interior on this rather than the exterior, if that makes sense, because I'm going to have it shown with it all open. You're going to see more of the work on the inside than you are the outside. So technically, the Zimmerit coating isn't going to be a mass thing at the end of the day. But as I said, it might be one of those things to show people how you can do it, because technically I would do it with filler. I would fill the entire outside of it, and as it's going off, I'd then run over it and put the stabs in. You can buy rollers and things as well to do in Zimmerit and all of that. That's how I would personally do it. But I know there is other options. You can buy sheets of Zimmerit, can't you, if I remember rightly, that you can stick on and do things like that to it. And there's some stuff in Photo Etch as well. But anyway, it's one of those things. It's up on the site now. You can have a look at it. It is still a beautiful kit. It's lovely. I love Tackham. Just the way they work and do everything else like that is absolutely fantastic. Right, because today technically I haven't had time to do any editing, I haven't had a chance to put the A10 up, I thought I'd run through a few questions that have come up over the last couple of weeks down in my section on the forum, so I thought I'd go through it now. If you posted up your questions in here and I don't get to you, this is when I tend to answer them, okay? Right, so Is that Brendan? He says, hello Phil, perhaps you'd know, I'd like to draw your attention to iModel Kit. Right, this is for the app for the phone, which my phone isn't here, is around somewhere else. We have it, I show it a lot. When we do Q&As, and if you watch any of the live shows, you'll know I refer to it. I don't trust it. I wouldn't put your life on it because some of the call outs they give, when you look at them, they say you can use this, this and this colour, and then you look at it and you think, that's well out. So don't trust everything you see on that. I think it's a generic sort of what I would call an information scraping, and then it's put on there, which means they just go around to everybody else's, take everyone else's information and have put it into an app. That's not to diss the app because it's quite a good starting place. Just check it first against a couple of other references. So get the colour you need and then just pop around and get some opinions from people if it's the right colour, because I do know some of their colours that they called out before. It says the Tamiya number for this and then the guns number. You look at those paints, they're nothing like each other. So which one is still right? So just be a little bit careful when using apps or any information. Just get a bit of a thing on there. Lucas, he says, hi Phil, about the Takom 135th scale King Tiger you said you're going to build. I see on the model is modelled without Zimmerit coating. Does this mean you are not going to do it on the version? As far as I know, all King Tigers with the Porsche Tiger have the Zimmerit on. Apart from the one at Bovington, because that one doesn't. So I don't know. I don't know. As I say, for the guys who want to see about doing Zimmerit coating and that, okay. The only thing I have been told about that particular kit is that it come up that people were saying that the Zimmerit, the moulded in version, is overdone. It seems to be too heavy, it's too ripply. And obviously they've got the other King Tiger with the Hansel turret, is it? At Bovington as well. That's got the Zimmerit on, genuine Zimmerit on it. And as I say, it's not nice. It literally is clay and horsehair and straw or whatever it is they make it out of and chuck it all over it. It's pretty rough and ropey stuff. It's not generic as you see it on a lot of these kits. So it's a bit like weathering aircraft. The rougher you are at it, the more realistic it tends to look. Am I going to do it? I don't know yet. When we get to that build, I'll think about it. But as I say, it's more going to be about the interior than it is the outside, if that makes sense. It's still going to have an outside job, but I'm just thinking about that way. Danny. How about dismantle the airbrush and soak it in small bath of simple green? Sounds like a good way to thoroughly clean your airbrush. Any experience with it? Again, we spoke about this. I don't tend to soak airbrushes. I don't think you really need it. If you're quite methodical with your airbrush and you clean it out from a strip clean, you really shouldn't need to soak it. The only time you're going to be looking to soak your airbrush is if you've suddenly got paint that's exploded down past the seal and got down the trigger mechanism and stuff like that. You might want to, but honestly, I don't think you need to do it. This is off the back we were talking about ultrasonic cleaners and stuff like that, and are they worth it? And we all pretty much of the opinion, me and the guys, that were saying that don't think you really need anything that heavy duty. Again, if you've got an airbrush and you've got it covered in paint, personally I just give it a squirt with a little bit of lacquer thinners, give it a rub all over, get in there with a cotton bud, and that's good enough for me. And I've never had to do that of physically soaking an airbrush. I tend to, once I've done, I give them just a wipe around and they're good to go. So, but again, simple green, it should work. I can't see why it shouldn't. Right, John says, hi Phil, the other day you was talking about soldering paste, didn't catch what it was called. Could you do a piece that I need to do for the Lancaster flap set, and I don't fancy super glue or PVH? John, the stuff is called it's called Mechanic Soldering Paste, product number MCN300. Okay, and this is it. It's the paste. Basically, you just brush it on, hold the two bits together, and if you've got a blowtorch, one of these little micro blowtorch ones, just hit it, and then it bubbles up, dries, and it solders in one. So it's like a solder and flux all in one, but you can actually brush it on where you want it, and then you can do it. So instead of having your normal thing with flux and solder and having to get in and do it separate, this you just brush in and do it. So it's like a pre-done version of it. Hopefully the camera will play ball. I can't see if you can see this, but there we go. That's what it is. Okay, now I don't know if you could see that, but hopefully you can. We've spoken about it before, and also if you go back to when I went through that tool chest with all the bits on there, you'll see all about that. But yeah, you can do it that way. I've done it on a few little things. To be honest, me and photo etch don't get on very well. Can't stand it. Too much work. Right, okay. Hey Phil, this is from Andy. I noticed you don't use varnishes a lot when you're painting weathering processes. Having come over to Flory from MIG Ammo Approach, I'm quite surprised by this and the fact that varnishes really don't seem to be as big a deal as I was previously led to believe. Any chance that you could discuss varnishing merits or lack of, therefore, on a future show? Excuse me. Right, okay. Depending what you're doing. If you're doing your model, if you've done your paint work, then I'm a great believer in, obviously you perhaps want to seal it at that stage, and that protects all your levels. And I think that's probably what MIG's getting on about and all the other people. The other thing as well is because I tend to use a lot of clay washes, they're totally safe. So you might have noticed this entire build, everything we've done on here, we haven't actually put a clear coat on this yet at all. And to be honest, I'm loving the finish on this as it is, and I might not even bother putting one at the final reveal because I'm quite liking the effect that this has got. It's got that sort of shininess, but it's looking flat. Okay, so again, I think it's that thing that if you're using hot products, i.e. like enamels and oils and stuff like that, you probably want to seal down just to protect your layers, and it gives you that barrier. Okay, and then also if you need to get that stuff off, you can get it off quite heavy duty without ruining your paint colours underneath. Because I tend to use washes a lot, the clay washes are totally safe. You don't need it, you can just go in there. You do need it though if you've got decals and various things that are complex, because you don't want the clay wash getting underneath the decals. But from my point of view, I don't tend to go in this thing of like, you do a layer, varnish, you do a next layer, varnish, you go next layer, because I like things to blend. Okay, and also the other thing as well is that we spoke about with this particular one is the difference in the tone and the shade of the paintwork gives you that sort of different effect. Now I know this thing on camera just doesn't look like it does in real life for some reason, but here I don't know how well you can see it, but the wings are quite polished on the upper side and everything else like that, but you get on the underside, they're not as polished and all the rest of it. And again, you've got the different panels where we did that post shading. They're a slightly different finish to the rest of the model. So some things are really polished and everything else like that. Other parts of it are a little bit flatter, and it's those differences which make the panels light up in different ways. So when you look at it, things are slightly different, and that's what I enjoy. But if you're continuously going in there putting layers of clear, flat satin gloss, you're losing all those layers. So when you come to that final one and you get people, very old school way of doing it, and they put a flat coat on as their final thing, unmask and away you go, everything's very flat, everything's very two-dimensional, if you like. So this way you've got that thing of saying some things are very flat, some things are actually quite shiny still, some things are almost glossy, and I think it just gives a more natural look. When you look at sort of modern aircraft now as well, you catch them in the sun, they're quite shiny, okay, they're not as flat as they might be, but this model as well, as you look across it, normally it's very flat, you catch it in the lights, it's very reflective. So it's just that thing of a different way of weathering, so you're looking at it from a visual point of view and you're catching edges which are reflecting at me, like these little strengthening plates down on the wings, they're shining on me now. The little curves of the surfaces are fuselage, not necessarily as much. So it's just that thing of adding an extra dimension as you look at a model. So you've got that thing of sort of, reflecting, dead, reflecting, dead, and it just breaks it up and gives you another look. So again, if you're using enamels, if you're using oils, you probably do want to seal between coats just to protect. My type of way of doing things though, because it's a little bit safer, shall we say, I don't have to worry about it and sort of warrant the problems perhaps other people have. Okay, Gary says, Phil, what would it take to convince you to add a t-shirt to your inventory for us to purchase? The black logo on would be cool. There anything else great? I seldom, a lot of us wear collar button up. You mean the polo shirts? Maybe you could take a poll with members. To be honest, we have got an entire new range of merchandise coming out in the next couple of months. It's all new. As I say, we've had the company who made these for us have gone bust. Unfortunately, they've gone. We won't mention that they took a bit of our money with it, but yeah, we have lost out. We got stung a little bit, but at the end of the day, we've got a new way of doing things. We've got a complete new product range coming out. You might know Mel's been on the forum and she was been asking questions what you'd like to see. We're extending the range of washes, sander range. We've got some new stuff coming from that, which will be along during probably the autumn by the time we get around to getting it done. And we have got a new way of doing tops and things like that, which I'm very excited about, and to be honest, we had the proof of it came through today, and then we're going to be pushing through with that. So give it a couple of weeks, it'll start to filter in, and then obviously the merchandise range will probably be done by the summer, and then the new range of products that we got coming out and stuff like that will be along by the autumn, hopefully in time for Telford, stuff like that. But obviously we've got to do a lot of testing yet, and the various things that go with it. So bear with us on that one. But as for normal t-shirts, definitely, absolutely, we will sort something out with that. Right, hold on, let me just move up here because some of these questions I've answered, some I haven't. Okay, next page. Sorry, where are we? Wrong page. Okay, so Stuart's saying, hi, it's my first post. I've watched many of your videos with great interest. Many thanks for taking the effort and time to do them. I have a question about airbrushing. When I airbrush, I think I am being too careful with the amount of paint that I put down. This is leading to drying hitting on the model. I have not got the confidence to open up the trigger for fear of flooding the model with runts. I've been watching your techniques. It seems that you often do not press the trigger and pull back until you get the right flow, but often you just press the trigger down immediately and get paint to achieve the same flow rate as you had before. This is specifically evident when you're putting down an area on the large surface. Am I correct? I always put down air and then carefully pull back on the trigger. If you could please help me out with this technique. Okay, yeah, a lot of that is just me being a smart ass and clever. I know the airbrush, I know the paint flow, and I know when I push down and pull back how it's going to happen. It's memory. It's that memory reflex in your hand. Different airbrushes, you have different settings and stuff like that, but that's how it literally is. And to be honest, when I'm doing that type of thing where I'm just going for it, I've already done it. It's not like I've just made up a batch of paint, because I normally will check. If you're starting out with your airbrushing, don't sort of, be put off too much by it. The biggest thing is it depends what you're painting. If you're using an acrylic, if you're using something like Tamiya, or if you're using like Vallejo, things like that, make sure you got a good paint flow and all the rest of it. Always go air first, then introduce your paint. Don't do together, because what can happen is if you're not a bit of a smart ass, you can end up with a tiny little bubble that appears because you've actually pulled back for paint before the airflow's coming through. Then what happens is it releases a little blob of paint onto your needle, and then the air gets behind it and then flicks that bubble of paint off your needle, and you end up with spitting all over your model, just that initial thing, as then it starts to atomize and get going. So you want to be a little bit careful with that. But generally, if you're using acrylics, you have to have a slightly higher air pressure. And when I say slightly, I usually shoot around, if I'm doing acrylics, 20 to sort of 24, 25 psi, high air pressure, and then you're going for it. Because you're using quite a high air pressure, you don't want to be too close, so you're a little bit further away, but you need enough paint to make it wet, because otherwise if you're shooting what I call dry, where you haven't got enough paint, it's drying before it hits your model, you end up with a rough texture and all the rest of it. Recently though, now I've moved to MRPs and painting this, I tend to have a far thinner coat, it's a wetter coat, so I can move in a lot closer. So this is what you want to do. You're just going to find your balance between being very close to your model, or if you're being far away, for what type of finish. If you're going for an overall effect, i.e. you're just colouring in, you can be a little bit further away, lots of paint going down on there. What I would suggest is literally check your flow. You're happy with your flow on your paper towel, whatever you're doing. Listening to your airbrush as well. If it's sounding like it's struggling, i.e. it's crackly type of noise, you need to thin your paint or up your air pressure, okay? If it's running really wet and just flowing very fast, then you can probably turn down your air pressure and you can just move in a little bit closer. The big thing with all of this though is the surface you're spraying down to. If you've actually got a first pass on this, i.e. you've got a nice light dusty coat right the way over, it's got plenty to grip to, you can make quite wet, you can be in a lot closer because it's not going to run, because it actually goes, sticks, melts into that original colour, and away you go, you're good to go. The trouble that you can have though, if you're putting down sort of, quite a thin coat of paint onto like bare plastic and stuff like that, it's just not going to stick, okay? It needs to stick to itself to be able to go in. And also some primers don't work like other primers. Not all primers are equal, okay? So from that point of view, I would always put down a light dusty coat before you come in with the main colour, even if you've got a primer down or anything else like that. So like when we did this one with the black basey type stuff under it, Didn't really like it, so we were going over nice dusty coat of the grey over, then a heavier coat, then an even heavier coat because it's got grip, okay? But always go air first, then go paint, because it stops the bubble on the end, okay, from that point of view. But a lot of it is just trying different techniques. So what you might want to do is make your paint a little bit thinner, lessen your air pressure, move closer. Air pressure dictates even how close to your model you are. If you're shooting at 25 psi, you can't get that close, because if you do, you're going to end up just blowing the paint. It hits your model and bounces literally off. It is literally going everywhere. That's when you get a lot of airborne stuff. If you thin your paint, you can then actually back off your air pressure and you can move in closer. Okay, so that is the thing with it, okay? But if you're using MRPs, you can go down to, I'm probably spraying around about 12 psi, 12 to probably 15 psi with MRPs. If I'm doing delicate tight in work, I'll knock it down to 10 psi and I can move right in very closely and get around. But all air pressure does is dictate how close you can be. Your high air pressure, if you're late 20s, you're going to be about this far away, okay? If you're down to 10 psi, you're probably just an inch or two away and you can just put it down like that, okay? Because otherwise you can get trouble. But it is that balance of thickness of paint will dictate your air pressure. Okay, so if you've got thick paint, you can need lots of air to atomize it, to stop you getting like spitting and all the rest of it. So again, if it's thinner, you can go less air pressure, you can move a lot closer. But it is that thing, find what works for you, as we're saying. Not all paints are equal, not all airbrushes are equal, depending on your needle size, your nozzle size, things like that, the paint you're using, what air pressure you're at, what thickness of paint. It's that balancing act. It's just finding the reasons why. So the big thing is that if you're getting spitty, gritty paint, your airbrush sounds like it's crackling, it needs thinning, okay? So a little bit more thinners into it until you can just hear a constant smooth hiss from your airbrush. That's what you're actually ultimately going for. That's why I don't mess around with air pressures and tell people actual air pressures, because everything is a variable, so many different things, okay? But if you're finding that thing where your airbrush is what I call just running on, i.e. it's really hot, it's really wet, then technically you just need to back off your air pressure a bit or thicken your paint a little bit, and then you can get in there. But there again, it is that balancing thing, because depending on the thickness of your paint gives you what effect you're going for. If you're using a very thick paint, you're going to get quite a rough texture, and it's going to cover very, very well. If you're using a thinner paint, you can then modulate and blur and just work paint in better and stuff like that. So recently, I must admit, I've changed my air pressures and I shoot a lot less than I used to. And then definitely from my point of view of using MRPs, it's a total new learning curve for me. But I am liking it and it's working very well, and I'm finding I'm doing it with other paints as well. So there we go. Right, that is about it. That gets us up. I think we've done most of the questions for today. Thank you very much for joining me. Tomorrow I will get up the next part of the A10, which will cover all about the mouth for you. You can go off and have a look at the King Tiger review, which is up with you right now. You can give me your thoughts on what you think of it and what you would like to see me do to it and things like that. What I'd like to do is take a trip over to Bovington and have a play with their one and get some nice reference shots off of it, and then sort of recreate theirs and go from that. Because as I say, with the Porsche turret, there isn't many around that have actually got the Porsche turret on it, but I know their one has, so I'm going to want to have a look at that one. So that's it from me. Happy modelling, take care, catch you all tomorrow.